Android users, you can now have TYT in the palm of your hand. Our TYT app is available for download in the Google Play Store. Just go to tyt.com/app to find out more.
The Trump administration has officially revoked the security clearance of John Brennan. He is the former CIA director. And this appears to be a retaliatory move by the Trump administration. Sarah Huckabee Sanders explained why during a press conference. Let's hear from her.
I'd like to begin by reading a statement from the president. As the head of the executive branch and commander-in-chief, I have a unique constitutional responsibility to protect the nation's classified information, including by controlling access to it. Today, in fulfilling that responsibility, I've decided to revoke the security clearance of John Brennan, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency. As part of this review, I am evaluating action with respect to the following individuals: James Clapper, James Comey, Michael Hayden, Sally Yates, Susan Rice, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Bruce Orr.
So Sarah Huckabee Sanders also mentioned, as you can see from that statement, a number of people who the Trump administration will consider revoking security clearance for. Now, some might wonder, well, why do these people need security clearance if they're no longer serving the roles that they were previously in? For instance, CIA director John Brennan clearly isn't the CIA director anymore. Well, sometimes what happens is there might be some sort of investigation, some sort of issue that the CIA would want a former director's expertise on. So that's one example of why that person would maintain security clearance. Another example would be doing work as a consultant because you have extensive knowledge as a former director of the CIA, for instance. So there are uses for having security clearance, even if they're not serving in the CIA or some other intelligence organization. But look, the heart of this matter is not national security. We all know that. What this is all about is retaliating against people that Donald Trump does not like. And Trump mentioned Brennan's erratic behavior. Really? Brennan's the one with erratic behavior? Like, that's a little ridiculous.
There's no authority on erratic behavior like Donald Trump.
I mean, come on. And so Brennan has been on the record very critical of Trump. Trump does not like that. Trump also doesn't like the Russia investigation or what anyone, any official person would have to say about supporting the Russia investigation. So it is retaliation, and it's pretty pathetic.
It's obvious that it's retaliation, and that's what people already know. But you have to deny it somehow. But so there's a way that they always play it both sides. So, along with her statements, there was also a point where she said, when someone asked her, she goes, including John Brennan, these people were chosen not because they were critics of the president. But also in the statement, she went on to say that his clearance was revoked because he's among a group of former officials who have, quote, transitioned into highly partisan people. Which one is it? Is it that they weren't chosen because they were critics of the president, or it's because they've become highly partisan people? Oh, maybe they're too partisan because they're too deferential to the president. Maybe they're too Republican and conservative, because you know how Donald Trump works. He does not like ass kissers. So when somebody is on his side constantly, it's like, you know what, I need to revoke your clearance, because you've become way too partisan.
Yeah, no, it's a great point that those two things are at odds with each other, because obviously he's not getting rid of these people because they're too partisan on behalf of the president. They're too partisan in criticism of many of the president's policies. So, of course, this is the evolution of this executive branch. We saw it under Richard Nixon when the enemies list of Richard Nixon was discovered. In this case, there's an enemies list in plain sight. I mean, this president goes after these people. It's security clearances on one day. It's headlines and tweets on another day. For example, Jeff Bezos, who he became angry with because of Washington Post investigations and Washington Post stories that he felt were highly critical toward his administration. He goes after Jeff Bezos by name and Amazon, talking about them getting a break. So this is all consistent with what is a politicization of the White House. I mean, it's obviously a political post, but the executive branch going after, for political purposes, US citizens is an extraordinary thing.
Right, and you have to consider this in the context of what's been going on with the executive branch throughout Trump's stint as president. He has solidified executive power. He has done things unilaterally. He has pushed for ways to do additional things unilaterally. One of the stories that we reported on last week was how the Trump administration is attempting to pass more policy unilaterally that would give additional tax cuts to big banks. And so they don't want to do that through Congress. And that completely circumvents the checks and balances that we have written in our Constitution. It is part and parcel of what this country is supposed to be about, checks and balances. So look, maybe it's wrong to say this, but John Brennan losing his security clearance, like I care, but it's not the end of the world. He's gonna be all right. But I do think this is a big deal in the grand scheme of things when you take this action into the context of power in the executive branch.
It's a warning shot. It's like, you better not cross me or else I will punish you. Part of the punishment is, as you mentioned, there's reasons that 1.3 million people, by the way, have these security clearances. So these 5 or 6 that he's considered, along with the 3 or 4 that he's already rejected, I'm not sure exactly how much of a dent that is on people who have these security clearances, but it's obvious that this is just a punishable thing. One of the reasons that they have it, again, that you mentioned, was to have other jobs. So now it's gonna be harder for you to get a job in your field because you don't have the access to the information that you need to have to give the appropriate amount of advice or consultation, whatever it is you need to do. So it's punishing you professionally for having a point of view, or at least voicing it to the American people. I mean, it's just that First Amendment thing that you have to talk about.
It's such a great point. I mean, Brennan is on the record criticizing Trump multiple occasions. He criticized Trump yesterday after Trump had tweeted about Omarosa being a dog. It's astounding how often you fail to live up to a minimum standard of decency and civility. So he goes on, seems like you never understand what it means to be president, nor what it takes to be a good, decent, and honest person. This is retaliation for criticizing the president. This is what big government is.
Right. This is someone who's outspoken against the executive. But this is an executive abuse of power. And Anna's right to point to the global nature, that is the greater nature of this. Leave aside the Brennan thing. This executive is designating certain institutions, the press, for example, and certain members of the corporate community. I gave you the example of Jeff Bezos, but it goes way beyond that, for retaliation. And he is angered enough to actually try to create certain systems within the executive branch for him to retaliate. That's what's so troubling about this, because he does have a lot of power and he is able to create these additional institutions within the executive branch. So, and last point, Anna talks about the increased tax cuts, which might come through the executive branch without Congress. Think about this. This Congress pretty much rubber stamps what this guy wants. I mean, they've become sort of this cultish group that supports almost whatever he asks for, I guess, short of the wall funding so far. But having said that, you can't even agree to let them have the last vote on whatever additional tax cuts you want. I mean, it must really be a tough task if you can't even trust it to this Congress. So I think it's also a part of that, trying to increase executive power under his presidency.
Absolutely, and conservatives claim that they were concerned about that under the Obama administration. But of course, that was all, fake concern, because as soon as they have someone like Trump solidifying executive power, increasing executive power, way more than Obama ever did, they don't say anything about it. And I want to give credit to Rich Lowry, who's an editor at National Review. He's a conservative. We disagree on a lot of things. But he is one of the few principled conservatives that I've seen out there who actually does voice his concern about executive power and what the Trump administration is doing. That is not an easy thing to do in today's climate, because in today's climate, if you have the audacity to speak out against Trump as a conservative, they come after you. And he's managed to—
Well, look what they did to Brennan. I mean,
they find a way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a sort of executive branch trolling that's going on that's just insane. I mean, it is a different environment, as you say, Anna.
Yeah,
I mean, it really takes guts to step out at all, especially if you're on the GOP side.
Exactly.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.